What's going on, guys? Kason41 here. Just going to be taking a look at Out of Action. It's a new game. It's an alpha playtest going on, so lots to do, lots to, still kind of flesh out. A lot of things are going to be unfinished. There is a nice little disclaimer message in the upper right hand there that says as much. But this is kind of something that I wanted to look at from like a game design perspective, because this is a solo development project, which is very, very cool. It's using the Unreal Engine, so I know a little bit about Unreal. It's not my preferred engine, but I know a little bit enough to kind of maybe discuss how some of the things are happening and everything like that. So, but again, not an Unreal development person, just kind of from a game design perspective, this game is quite interesting to me, and it's just an alpha playtest, so still a lot to figure out, but it was a very cool thing to take a look at. I played like one match, did terribly, but noticed some pretty cool things while doing so. So one of the first things that I wanted to touch on here from like a game design perspective is the UI. And so it's a single developer project. A lot of the times UI kind of gets kicked to the background, but the UI for this is actually pretty dang decent, especially for just an alpha playtest. It has a little selection type of thing going on whenever you hover over it. It does make it kind of hard to read, so like if you were doing this quickly and you were trying to cycle through, that's a little hard. Like you can still kind of read it, but it's pretty rough. So that might be something that you can probably fix just by, making it more readable as it happens. But like if you're toggling, like you're like moving really quick, it's very hard. But as far as an alpha playtest goes, it's very, very functional. It's very, very nice. It does a lot of things right. One of the things that I did kind of want to look at with pretty much every game that I play is the configuration. Check out the options here. So I wish it was called settings rather than config. I can totally understand why it's called config, but especially if you're going to localize a game and you're going to translate that into different languages, that might be a little bit harder to kind of do. Like config in English makes sense. You play a lot of games, it makes sense. But if this is like a newer person coming in and they see the word config, they might not understand that means settings. So settings or options tends to be like the preferred word that you should use for those kind of things, just because it's more universal, it's a little bit more understood. But it does have rebindable keys, which is kind of always something that you really do want to see. It does have like toggles of various things, which is nice as well. And there's like a little bit of selection thing. There's no real effect on these buttons, which is kind of interesting considering how heavy the effect is on these buttons, as well as the Discord, Out of Action, and Doku games down here. But it's a very minimal but functional graphics menu. It would definitely suffice for an alpha playtest for sure. Now as this advanced, you would definitely want to see some accessibility options, so things to like disable this jittery CRT effect, which is, in my opinion, pretty cool. So this is Unreal Engine, so one of the things that you could be doing with other engines, I would say like maybe it's like a camera layer or like a UI specific layer that does the jitter or something like that. But with Unreal Engine, I believe you can actually just take these UI elements and hook up a blueprint to them and just tell it, hey, this is your thing. And it does kind of lead me to believe that that is what's happening, because they are jittering in the same pattern. If you kind of look at them, the jitter is like applied uniformly across the icon, but in the same kind of frequency. So like it's a little squished over here, it's a little expanded over here, it's very expanded up here, but the jittering is happening at the same spot. So it does give it that kind of like good, like, Ghost in the Shell, if anybody's ever seen that show, kind of feel, like very, techie, very, kind of like low sci-fi kind of deal there, which is pretty cool to see. And so you have a pretty basic loadout screen, which is, it is what it is. That'll work perfectly for everything like that. I would love to see these explained a little bit more as to what all this does. This is pretty self-explanatory, but again, if you're not explaining things to your players, you're kind of not doing it right, no matter how cool the system is. Which is funny because that's the case here. But one of the best things about this game, in my opinion, from a conveyance standpoint, is just the amount of like detail that's provided on this screen. So there's really nothing here until you hover over stuff. And then there's a wonderful tooltip that provides tons of information. Like as you add more points and stuff like that, it kind of like shows you like, hey, if you hit 25, we unlock more things because this is all this stuff and whatnot. So if you hit 25, it lights up and it tells you, hey, now you have that. If you hit 26, it hits that kind of thing, which is kind of cool. But that does seem to be like scaling as you go. They also gave you a nice little tutorial section over here, even though there's minimal of that, kind of a helpful hint rather than tutorial about how to downgrade and upgrade things, which is quite nice, because you might not know otherwise. So it's very cool to see that. As well as these tooltips here are very, very good. They added a little bit of flavor stuff with manufacture and unit ID. That's very like world building. That's very good stuff right there. But they also add in everything that you as a player would need to understand. So it tells you, your radar profile and everything like that. I don't really know if that's super implemented, but we'll see. It is an alpha playtest after all, but it is a very, very good example of the amount of detail that you would want to show your player, because any system you have in your game, if you don't fully explain it to your player or convey it in one way or another, it doesn't matter how good it is. If they can't understand it, it's not a good system. Half the fun of a game is trying to like figure out how to play within the systems that you've designed. Personally, my design philosophy is all about giving the player the ultimate amount of freedom possible, which this game seems to do within the confines of an alpha playtest and the confines of a single FPS that's just supposed to be very low sci-fi, low tech, and kind of like snappy, kind of like a really quick reaction Call of Duty. And that's not the kind of player I am, so I'm not very good at this game, but from a game design perspective, this is all very, very good. You just hold it, the sound design there of holding it down and it speeding up as it adds points more quickly. Very nice little feel thing right there. Commit is also kind of cool. Unlock and reset, also kind of cool, but not really sure why you would lock it if you can just reset it with a single button. Makes sense in some aspect, but another way it might not. It might just make more sense to have it just consistently unlocked. But very cool UI design nonetheless. There's also a minimal server browser, which would work just fine. It is interesting that it doesn't automatically start as soon as you join. There's nothing wrong with that. It does introduce like a little bit of friction for your players to have that happen. But the trade-off there is that it doesn't automatically use up bandwidth. And especially because this is an alpha playtest, there's probably like minimal servers. I don't know if this is peer-to-peer or server-client type of situation, but it is something to think about. If you have something constantly pulling your servers every time they pull up there, it might make more sense to have this, even though it causes that little bit of friction to actually hit search. It might make more sense to have it this way though, because you don't bog down your servers with constant pings every time somebody clicks here. You don't bog down the person's game whenever they just accidentally hit server browser instead of AI bots or Matrix. You get that lag spike of it like reaching out and searching, unless you somehow were able to like do multi-threading and kind of push that search off to a different core or something like that, a different thread. Not exactly entirely sure how you would do that in the Unreal Engine, but something to think about. Definitely a design choice, definitely something that's very valid. It is just something to think about, especially in an alpha playtest. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Alright, so from a gameplay perspective, let's try out AI bots. Just 10%, 50% damage, test map. I'm terrible at this game, forewarning, but it is a very cool game. The soundtrack is very, very good. Even just this right now is quite good. Just the pumping of it is very neat. So let's see what we have here. So TTK, TT Fence System, Cerberus Sidearm. Alright. So we have a Disruptor, which is some kind of throwing weapon. Probably not what I want. TTK, throwing knives, a bolster, a double tap, tactical pistol, burst fire pistol. That sounds cool. Let's go ahead and give that a try. Very interesting that you hit ready and then deploy. There's not too much of a difference between those two buttons. It does make sense, but it is something to think about. If you just hit ready or something like that, like have a countdown or something like that, or maybe display this button more predominantly. The little flash is very good. Oh no, my sensitivity's all messed up, but I am not the FPS player, so it is what it is. Let's see if there we go. Ooh, there's people. Well, there's bots, but still. Very twitchy game, very atmospheric. Even the reloading does sound good. The weapon model is also very good. Oh no. I got ganked pretty bad there. 3 of them got me. It does seem like it's all against one, so they're pretty much all against me, which is quite interesting. But very neat game, and the sound design's good. I definitely need to tweak my sensitivity. It's very twitchy for me, but It doesn't seem like there's a run, so it seems like you build momentum another way. And now, because this is an alpha playtest, that's fine to not convey. But that's very cool that you get the music in there. And I mean, the music's good. It fits the genre. It fits what you're doing. You know, you're running around, you're looking over corners, you're trying not to get ganked, you're trying to take out the bots. But it is very good design. And I'm not gonna shoot him because I'm not a Twitch person. But it is very good. The sound effects are very good. The walking's very good. Ooh, okay, grenade. Awesome, awesome. I imagine they're gonna start coming for me any second because they probably have figured out where I am if the AI is any good. There's definitely more abilities that I have not tried out. So what's 4? 4 looks to be some kind of healer. Ooh, dang, I got ganked. It is hard to talk and play at the same time and figure things out, but... So X appears to be some kind of flame grenade, which is very cool. Again, alpha playtest, so I don't really expect it to be anything major. Seems like C kind of gives you some kind of stone skin. But that's not wildly explained there. If I was really going to sit down and play this game, I would definitely adjust the sensitivity so we can see how that goes. I did just see a radar ping. Yeah. That guy. Which is kind of neat. So there's definitely like a radar ping system as well. What exactly sets it off, I'm not sure because that guy didn't do it, but... Whoop. Eee. Let's get out of here. Oh, and there's some kind of slow-mo system as well. I'm not exactly sure what triggers that, but that was kind of cool. I would definitely say as this game gets developed further, you will want to develop some kind of system as far as conveying to the player a little bit more what is happening, how it's happening, everything like that. Again, alpha playtest, very understandable that that's not being done, but something definitely to think about. I'm not sure. So middle mouse button, pulls you into third person. And there's a cooldown on that for some reason, which is kind of interesting. But, not sure why there would be a cooldown on the first to third person. Maybe so you can't spam it. I guess from a game design perspective, some people could use that to cheat a little. I'm actually going to try to like peek a corner. So if I was in first person, I would have no idea what's around there. But if I did third person, you could. So it's interesting that you can switch from... Okay, somebody has like locked on me or something. Interesting that you can toggle back and forth one way, but not the other. But very good feel. Very good sound design. Very good... Pretty much everything, honestly. So I want to get out of here. This is bad. Let's try the stone skin. Nah, it didn't work. Or at least I couldn't understand it. So I would like to see like different options and stuff like that. Clearly, I'm not the best FPS player in the world. I'm usually better than this, but I am really trying to take my time and just figure out the systems in which I'm playing in, as well as kind of take a little bit of analysis time as to nice. Okay, so it seems like once you encounter one of them, you get pinged by other ones, and they kind of come to check out what happened to their friend. So it seems like you can trigger your slowdown time with Alt once your core is charged. Again, something that's fine right now, but something you would definitely want to explain to your player a little bit more in an actual full game. So it seems like they're able to do it too, which is interesting. Oh, didn't see that grenade. A very good sound design there, very good pop, very good snap. I also like the death cam. That just tends to be a good feature. One of the things that I'm noticing is there is a serious amount of graphical kind of shaky and like distortion, which is not something you want always. In some games, especially in this game, it does make sense, but it is one of the things that you should be thinking about long term if you want to get the largest player base possible. You're going to have people that can't handle, like if I die here, this kind of jittery, flippy thing. That's going to make some people sick. So that's going to be something you want to enable or disable inside of the config in this case, but settings preferably would be the name. But that is something to definitely consider. It's very thematic, it's very nice, but it is something that will definitely turn some players off on your game. Although, I mean, some players, you know, who might have that problem anyway, can't see what's going on. Oh, there it is. Oof. Some players who are already like predisposed to motion sickness and stuff like that, that's really going to mess with them. So it's something you have to think about as you commercialize a game. Some people are going to have a problem with that, but it is something to consider as well. The FPS, a lot of times people with motion sickness problems and stuff don't play these kind of games anyway. From a market analysis perspective, I'm unsure. You'd have to do your own research, but I can just say that it never bothered me when I was a little bit younger, but as I get a little bit older, all the quick, snappy stuff, all the really distortion-heavy things make it a little bit harder for me to play certain games, especially FPSs. I mean, just honestly, as I'm getting older, I'm getting less and less competitive with this stuff, but it is definitely something to think about, that if you're trying to expand to the largest possible market, one of the things you're going to want to do... Oh, he has a katana. Oh, it's a burst pistol. I didn't understand that. I'm sure it was explained to me in the tooltip, but I just didn't read it. But maybe you're not missing out on a large market segment. Maybe you are. That's, you know, for a publisher or somebody like that to determine. But overall, the destruction of this, just the glass shattering, very good effect. It should be conveyed a little bit better. This is bulletproof. I guess the hexagon structure kind of does that for you. But it is something else to consider to just display that. Oh, I almost got ganked there. Ooh, there's a lot of you. Yeah. Not getting out of that one. They come at you pretty quick. And I'm assuming you're supposed to be quicker than me and everything like that, but I'm really just trying to take in the game. There is a lot of really nice stuff about this game. The gun models are, you know, pretty good. The maps are pretty barren, but it is an alpha playtest. It is explained several times that that's what's happening here. So that's interesting. So you can't break those with anything other than some kind of explosion. So as you can see, I just tried the my little thing right there. It also seems like I have a jetpack, which I did not know. Which is super cool. Definitely just got ganked right out of the air. But also something really, really neat to kind of explain. Dragon does make sense. So there's a drifter jump pack right there. So if players were to take the time and actually read through all this stuff, they would understand like the, you know, abilities that are available to them. But it is very cool. It's a very sleek little game. The gunplay is good. You know, the models and stuff, the graphics and whatnot can always be updated. But oof. Don't know how I killed myself, but sure. The core gameplay loop of, hey, you run around, you shoot things, you kill things, that's it, is there. It's very good. I would recommend just a handful of gameplay tweaks as far as from like an accessibility and whatnot. Like the ability to disable the bobbing is also a really good idea, just because bobbing doesn't, you know, sit well with some people. That's something you have to consider. but it is not the worst thing in the world. It's definitely stuff that you could get later, because like there is no head bob or anything like that in here. There's just graphics quality and stuff. So from a design perspective, the core gameplay loop, solid, very, very solid. Overall, I would recommend it, even though I'm pretty trash at it. It does seem to be very good. The shooting feels good. I could tell that somebody just threw a mine at me. The slow motion, you know, Mad Max style fighting also feels quite good there. Somebody's coming. Whoop. Yeah. Switching weapons, very fluid. Animations are solid. Everything feels pretty good. Now, there really is no like switch animation, very Call of Duty-esque, very just quick switch. But is something to think about. Also, the leading is also pretty well done. There's not much of a lean. Like if you were to come over to this and be fully covered in lean, you can only hit like, that's actually pretty good. But like, that's kind of an interesting perspective there. So it won't actually sight in until it has it. And then once you have your cursor, you can come over much, 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 much closer than original. But if you, as soon as you pop out, if you try to aim over your same spot, you just fire in the middle of nowhere. So the developer has a little bit of stuff to work out there as far as how exactly they're calculating that. But nothing overcomable by any means. Not overcomable, insurmountable, I guess is the word I should use. By any means. But very, very good. Very, very good. But some minor technical issues like that. I would also say, let's see how that goes. So that's kind of neat. The particle effects, also quite good. The sound effects of the particle effects, also pretty decent. A light flare is not over, there's not too much bloom or anything like that, which is something you want to see. As well as the stone thing is also very cool. It changes the texture of your arms, so you're getting a little bit of visual conveyance there as far as, an effect has been applied to you, you should, pay attention to it. So Z, I don't really know what Z does, even though it's a listed button on my bottom left there. Ooh. They're kind of cool. Also, I can just jetpack around. Not entirely sure what killed me, but I'm also not really trying too hard. I'm not the best FPS player anyway, but I'm also really not trying too hard. I'm just trying to think of things to point out from a game design perspective. Like, these lights are very interesting. They're just floating. I don't know if anybody had noticed that up until this point. And it's one of those game design things that you're not really going to notice unless you're like looking for it. Like as a player, there's no reason that really matters to you whether or not they're connected unless you're like in an immersive kind of thing. But from an immersion standpoint, it doesn't break it for you because you don't really need to know that none of these lights are actually connected to the surface for the most part. They just light things up, and that's all you really need to know. I do like the thematic Doku developer part there. Also that there is a gunship just orbiting. The abrupt end of the game is also kind of an interesting choice. Again, alpha design, whatever, it works, but something you definitely want to kind of have like a proper exit to. But yeah, this is Out of Action. Very good game feel, in my opinion. But definitely some things to work on. It is an alpha playtest, so of course that's the case. But definitely some things to work on. Definitely some things, that could be polished and just be around, take off the rough edges and everything like that. But as far as the core gameplay loop, it's very solid. The gunplay is good. The bots seem to be more than sufficient. There's a server browser if you want to do PvP, which a lot of people do. Definitely wasn't going to try that while I was trying to just think about the game design and notice little things and notice the feel and whatnot. but it is definitely a solid contender, especially from a solo dev. I would love to see what could happen to this game if, you know, he gets some kind of, you know, game design experts in there and just kind of really goes to town on the visuals, really goes to town on the map design, level design. I definitely feel like you could have a pretty competitive shooter in this space, just with the amount of abilities and customization. It seems like there's a very solid template laid out here as far as things you could do with it. Like, you could add more shells, you could add more weapons, you could add more abilities, you could add more tons of stuff, tons and tons of stuff. It's a very, very awesome game. But yeah, so this has been Case of 41 talking about the game design of Out of Action. I will catch you guys next time.